We are at the BlueOrchard Impact Summit and we just kicked off the afternoon session. I am now joined by Dr. Isabel Martinez. Isabel, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Isabel, you are the founder and the head of the research section Inequality and Public Economics at ETH, which fits perfectly with our theme, Bridging the Divide. Now, if you allow, let's maybe take a look at things from a top-down view. Income and wealth inequality has been on the rise both in the most advanced economies, but as also in emerging economies. What, from your perspective, are the key drivers and how can we address this increasing divide?
Well, there are many drivers, and I think which one is the most important is first hard to identify and depends a lot on the country. Different countries, different settings are different. But so I'm trying to map out maybe different areas. One are market forces. So in a globalized world where a lot of markets are very much happening in the internet, it's easy to scale at no additional marginal cost. So basically, whether you kind of sell another Spotify subscription, another Netflix subscription, for these companies that has no additional marginal cost. So it's very easy to scale up. Mm-hmm. That helps to generate a lot of wealth within the hands of very few. Mm-hmm. Then there are other tendencies in these sectors. We've seen platform economies arise, and they are everywhere. Amazon Marketplace, that's where Amazon makes their money. It's Uber, it's Booking.com, like all these businesses are platforms, and platforms have a natural tendency to become a monopoly because it's best for all of us if we all search on the same platform for a hotel. And if all the hotels are on the same platform, and social media is the same. So these are markets that have this tendency to become natural monopolies. Mm-hmm. And we know that monopolies kind of lead to a concentration of rents, of eventually power in the market. And so this is one area. We've also seen market concentration in labor markets, which can drive down wages. Then there's monetary policy. If you had already assets, you benefited from low interest rates because you could then borrow at very low rates, invest and generate more wealth. Also, asset price valuations help those who already have assets, right? If market prices of stocks and shares increase, that helps those who already have something. Those who don't have these types of assets are also real estate. They don't benefit from these increases that happen in prices. So this, again, drives up wealth inequality. Then there's also political areas like taxation. So we've seen a decline in the tax burden for the rich in different areas. So be it wealth taxation, but also top marginal tax rates on incomes. Then there's the question of inheritance. Do you tax inheritance or not? Mm-hmm. And finally, I would also say there's political influence, lobbying. And of course, if you have already this concentration of wealth, you can afford to invest more in political lobbying, mm-hmm. ensuring that policies favor your interest group.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for laying out these key drivers. Now, can you maybe share with us what exactly is the role of the public sector and what are ways how the public and private sector can most effectively work together?
So I think one advantage that the public sector and governments have is that they enjoy democratic legitimacy. Mm-hmm. What they do so let's talk about democratic countries. It might be different elsewhere, but what a democratic government does has been approved by the citizens. This is very different. Private initiatives are important, but they lack kind of this democratic approval of like, okay, this is the direction we want to go. So I think what governments can do, and also a role that they have, is they put down the rules, the framework within which then also these private initiatives can take place. I think this has also become clear here over the past 2 days that this is the role of governments. Banks are not in the place to, say, oh, you have to invest in sustainable ways. No, the customer comes and you can give them options. If you want to have rules about whether one can, invest in fossil fuels or not, well, as long as we allow companies that operate in these segments, you will have people that can invest there, right? Yes. So I think the governments need to lay the framework. But then I think cooperation is interesting in the sense that, there's always the worry that governments may not be efficient. It's unclear whether this is true or not, or in which areas, and so on and so forth. I also think there are inefficiencies in the private sector, but I think one advantage that can be from these corporations is that you have the possibility in these corporations with the private sector that you take some of the operations out of this sometimes very big governmental kind of organizations, and sometimes smaller entities, private entities, can do some things more efficiently.
Now, can you explain the impacts that inequality has on the one side on the economy, but then also on the behavior of individuals?
So I think very high inequality can hinder economic growth in different ways. So one concern would be access to education. And that's not just how expensive it is to go to university, but also what are your opportunity costs to spend another 4 years or 5 or 6 in higher education or go and work? Can you afford these additional years where you'll not be earning a proper wage? There's the question also of, so especially in the developing world, access to finance. Do you have access to credit? Are you credit constrained? And if you're credit constrained, that means you might actually have the skills and the tools and everything to be a successful small-scale entrepreneur, but you need this initial credit to get started. And if you have nothing, right, nobody's going to give you credit, typically. And I think that's part why we're here and what BlueOrchard does. And I think that's also very clear, right, why inequality hinders people. And finally, it's the problem that arises from a social perspective is that when people feel left behind, that's a major source for social unrest. And we know that social unrest is always harmful for growth, because who's going to invest in places that are unstable? And we've seen this, the Gilets jaunes movement in France, the recent unrest in the UK. I would say even what happened on January 6th in the US. This is an attack on democracy, but I think the root there is people are deeply unhappy about their relative position in the distribution of income and wealth. And they feel that they're left behind, that they're treated unfairly. And I think this creates a lot of anger and eventually can lead to outcomes like what we've seen, where people really are eventually attacking the very democratic institutions that are meant to hold us together as society.
Last question, based on the discussions over the past 2 days, what are the most critical next steps from your perspective?
So I think what the past 2 days have shown is that even actors from the world of banking and investment that have been present here have acknowledged, look, there's only so much we can do as private actors. And also the question, it's not the role of a bank, for example, to be forcing people to invest in sustainable ways, to policing whether their clients are compliant with taxes or not. So, but these rules need to be set by the government. And I think this regulation, yes, it's not the role of the bank to regulate the world, but that also means governments need to be able to regulate banks, to regulate, different areas of how we're going to move forward. And for that, I also think that this is only possible if governments are properly funded. Now, you can look at how governments spent their money, and maybe there's room to improve, but obviously one part of being sufficiently funded is getting the revenue that you need to tackle these challenges, and that's where we come back to taxes, in my view.
Okay. Excellent, Isabel. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your perspectives. I greatly appreciate it. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm sure and hope so did you. Thank you so much for watching.